To class, everyone. What we are going to be doing today is we're going to be talking a little bit about characterization and specifically about the complex character and how that applies to Animal Farm. Now, some of this is going to be a bit of a review. I understand that, and even the stuff that we're looking at in this Prezi that is not mine, as you can see, it's not mine, but I found it and it's very applicable to what we're going to be talking about. But a lot of this is going to be a review from what we talked about last semester when we talked about characterization, especially when we looked at the short story unit. But I think that it'll be a good to review it for a lot of you, and some of you maybe don't remember it or weren't here for it. So we're gonna take a look at that. We're gonna obviously talk about Animal Farm. I'm gonna give you guys a chance to do some journaling. So if you haven't done so yet, do make sure that you have your journal next to you. This will be a journal entry day. So when we start with characterization, characterization itself, character traits are the qualities, values, and attitudes that a character possesses. And there are a lot of different facets to how you define that character. So we'll go over those somewhat quickly, and we're just going to define those different character traits and different types of characters, and then we're going to actually do a little bit of journaling after that, and then we'll talk about the novel. Characterization is how the author develops and displays the characters and their traits. There are 4 categories of characterization. Perhaps some of this is maybe coming back to you. So we have major and minor characters. Major character, a character that takes a large role in the story and may or may not be the main character. Okay, a major character helps kind of helps progress the plot a lot, does a lot of that, but they might not be that main character. Okay, there are a number of characters in everything you guys have seen that don't necessarily have to be the main character. This is a person. Again, not my Prezi. I'm not sure who that is. Maybe you know who it is, but you can basically fill in anybody right there and make it a major character that, again, might not be the protagonist, but is integral to the plot. Minor character is a character who plays a small role in the story, and his or her role is not necessary to the story. Sometimes they're called ancillary characters, but that's kind of what we're looking at there. All right, now, and that's that one elf guy from Lord of the Rings. For those of you that have seen that, he ends up dying. Spoiler alert! But just so you know, he is a minor character. He's not huge in the story, but it's nice to have those minor characters because it does kind of help it maybe be a little more realistic. Actually, I'm going to back up just a little bit. So we're going to look at round versus flat characters. I'm sure some of you remember this. Round characters, the character's personality, background, and motives are fully developed in the story, and we truly understand that. And we're going to look at Napoleon as a very round character in Animal Farm. Buddy from Elf, for those of you that know, he's a very round character, right? We understand his motivations, we understand his history, we understand a lot about him and his personality, and he's a very round person. He's very full as a character. Flat, the complete opposite of that. So you guys might remember the character is simple, uncomplicated, very little background information is really given. We don't know much about them. The author from Elf, other flat characters where we don't learn much about them could be Chewbacca from Star Wars. I love Star Wars. Chewbacca, he's a pretty flat character. We don't know a lot about him, and he doesn't speak English, so we don't even know what he says. It seems like Han Solo is the only one that knows what he's saying. But Chewbacca is, everybody loves Chewie, but he's still a flat character. Okay. Dynamic versus static, right? So flat and round go together. Dynamic and static go together. Dynamic is the character goes through a significant internal change, right? We have the character starts out in one way, and then by the end of it, they're completely different. Luke Skywalker, very dynamic, and even Vader, very dynamic, right? I don't think any of you actually know what that's from, so we'll just actually move on. The static character, okay, again, the antithesis of the dynamic character does not go through any internal changes, right? They are static, right? If you think of that kind of just the sound that static makes, kind of the same thing there. It's just constant and continual. And a lot of static characters actually can be our antagonists. They can be very static because they don't go through a lot of internal change, because they don't feel that motivation, and they do have to be still evil, essentially, right? And then our protagonist and antagonist, not going to talk too much about this. Again, leading hero, heroine of the story. It's the person who progresses the plot. And Harry Potter, well done. And then the antagonist, the adversary or enemy of the hero of the story. Basically, the person who's trying to stop our protagonist, right? So Voldemort. And again, remember, it doesn't always have to be a bad person. Okay. So what I want you to do right now, again, that kind of summarizes the characterization element of today. What I want you to do right now is get out your journal and think of a complex character, okay? Because when we're talking about complex characters, it's usually a character who is maybe dynamic, but that complex character mostly is very round. There's a lot to that character. The round character, again, if we look over here, is they have, oops. Okay, I am officially not enjoying Prezi. The round character, okay, if we're talking about sorry about that. The round character's personality, background, and motives are fully developed in the story. Okay, that is essentially what defines a complex character. The complexity there is there's a lot of depth, right? And that depth is really what we're looking for and what we're trying to figure out. So get out your journals, and I want you to think back to maybe a story you've read or a movie you've seen. I really don't mind at all. And think of a round character, a complex character, and focus a lot on motivation. What was it that was motivating that character? I want you to spend the next 10 minutes writing in your journal, thinking about a complex character, again, thinking about a round character that you've come across. What was it that made them round, and what was it that made them complex? And how did this character become so developed, and how did the character progress? It could be a protagonist, it could be an antagonist, I really don't mind. But journal about that for 10 minutes. So pause the video and journal about that now. Okay, so hopefully you paused it and you wrote. Hopefully you didn't just keep it going and get that awkward little pause in there. But your hand should hurt, maybe? I don't know. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to talk about Animal Farm, and we're going to look at the complexity of the characters in Animal Farm. So you should have read chapters 3 and 4. If you didn't read chapters 3 and 4, do you know what I'd do right now? Is I'd pause this video and I'd read chapters 3 and 4, and then I'd come back to it, because this isn't really going to help you out very much. So again, if you didn't read, pause the video, and then once you're done reading 3 and 4, come back, and then we can talk about this. Okay, so hopefully you've now read, or you already have read, the chapters. In this, we learn a lot about a few of the characters. We also learn about the structure that they're kind of putting in place, right? And what I want to do actually is I want to focus on Napoleon, okay, our pig Napoleon, and how he is essentially a complex character. Okay, in chapter 3, we learn a few things that maybe don't seem very fair to the other animals. The pigs seem to be creating a separation between them and all the other animals, right? For example, right here, the pigs had set aside the harness room as a headquarters for themselves. Here, in the evenings, they studied blacksmithing, carpentering, and other necessary arts from books which they had brought out of the farmhouse. Okay, that's not too bad. I mean, when you consider what they're doing, they're learning, right? I mean, they're in the constant pursuit of knowledge. The problem, though, is they are creating that separation from the other animals. And instead of let's all get together and learn about blacksmithing and carpentering and other things that they learn from the books, instead it's just the pigs that are learning. And we've talked about this in class, that idea of knowledge. I mean, it's cliche, but knowledge really is power. And in a fascist regime, what a lot of people, what that fascist government will do is it will stifle and it will hold down the people by not allowing them to have an education. That education is huge for understanding, like this isn't right, this isn't just. George Orwell, our narrator in the novel, actually, our speaker is constantly hinting at certain elements of there being intelligent animals and not intelligent animals, right? The hens and then ducks, seems like the waterfowl for some reason, they're not very intelligent, but our more intelligent animals are trying to learn, but they're obviously not being allowed to learn as much. Okay. One thing that's worth noting is the motivation Napoleon has. Remember, this is an allegorical novel, and Napoleon is an allegory for Joseph Stalin. We're going to learn more about Joseph Stalin on Monday, but one thing to wonder is, what is Napoleon's motivation, right? We could look at Joseph Stalin and look at his history and that sort of thing, and figure out really what his internal motivation was. But what is Napoleon's motivation? And Mr. West and I actually talked about this to kind of figure out, at the beginning of Animal Farm, at the beginning of them, after the revolution, they start creating this government, this sort of government, right? But everybody, we're all fair. What was Napoleon really after? Was he seeking to become powerful, right? Was he seeking power, or was it something else? Were his motivations genuine, where he was really trying to work for everybody? And I think that you can maybe go either way with it. Personally, I feel as though Napoleon initially, just like maybe even Joseph Stalin, he looked at this as an opportunity to make everything better for the people, for him, for the country. Everything can come together, and we can finally bounce back, and we don't have to be subjected to the that fascist regime or whatever, that Tsarist regime. But things have changed, right? I think that not only is Napoleon perhaps a round character at this point, but he's also a dynamic character, and we see this change almost instantaneously. We don't see the progression over time. Eventually, there has to be a shift, right? We have to see that at one end, it's for the animals, for everybody, and these genuine pursuits of kind of coming together and everybody being one and that sort of thing. But there has to be eventually this scale that's tipped over, where we now are seeing our animals are a bit more selfish, right? Or our pigs are more selfish, right? And we see that, right, especially right here. The mystery of where the milk went was soon cleared up. It was mixed every day into the pig's mash. The early apples were now ripening, and the grass of the orchard was littered with windfalls. The animals had assumed, as a matter of course, that these would be shared out equally, right? Again, that idea of socialism, we all get it, we're all equal. One day, however, the order went forth that all the windfalls were to be collected and brought to the harness room for the use of the pigs. At this, some of the other animals murmured. I don't know if you guys know what murmured mean, but it's kind of when somebody does something, you kind of get together and you're kind of talking, and maybe there's also that kind of the implication that it's kind of hushed, but you're thinking, oh, I don't like that. Why do they get it? I want to eat those apples. Why do they get the apples? I thought that, and so it's not being very happy with what's going on, and kind of talking bad about it behind the backs of those that are kind of doing the bad thing. And so the other animals murmured, but it was no use. All the pigs were in full agreement on this point. And if you notice, it's all the pigs. It doesn't say the animals, it's all the pigs. And that doesn't really make sense in true socialism, because in true socialism, right, it's the idea that the government and the people, everything's owned together and everybody owns each other. And you'd think that everybody would have a say, but obviously not here. All the pigs were in full agreement on this point, even Snowball and Napoleon. Squealer was sent out to make the necessary explanations to the others. Squealer, we're actually going to learn about Squealer as an allegorical element of propaganda. Right? And if you look, it says, "Comrades," he cried, "you do not imagine, I hope, that we pigs are doing this in a spirit of selfishness and privilege. Many of us actually dislike milk and apples. I dislike them myself. So it's almost like we're martyrs, right? We're doing this for the good of the people. Our sole object in taking these things is to preserve our health. Milk and apples, this happens to be proved by science, comrades. contain substances absolutely necessary to the well-being of a pig. We pigs are brain workers. They're the intelligent ones, so we need brain food. The whole management and organization of this farm depend on us. Day and night we are watching over your welfare. It is for your sake that we drink that milk and eat those apples. Do you know what will happen if we pigs failed in our duty? Jones would come back. Yes, Jones would come back. Surely, comrades, cried Squealer, almost pleadingly, skipping from side to side and whisking his tail. Surely there is no one among you who wants to see Jones come back. And so what he's doing is he's essentially eliciting fear into them. We deserve these because if we don't get these, then all these bad things will come back, right? Jones will come back. And yet, why? What on earth would make Jones come back? How realistic is that? Just because they're eating apples and drinking the milk, right? Now in chapter 4, right? In chapter 4, what we see is the farmers get together and we learn a little bit about Mr. Jones and some terrible things happen. The men essentially storm the animal farm, right? They storm Animal Farm, and the pigs or the animals fight back. And at one point, Boxer, right? He actually kicks one of them in the head and killed him, right? And one of the lambs is dead, right? And it's interesting what we see. Originally, what Old Major was telling us was that those who walk on 2 feet are the enemy. Now what we're seeing is no sentimentality, comrade, because Boxer feels bad, right? He says, "I didn't want to kill him." Right? I feel badly about that. But he says, no sentimentality. War is war. The only good human being is a dead one. And there is this very drastic change, right? We are seeing these pigs become very dynamic and very complex, and a lot of it has to do with their motivation. Again, I believe that they had genuine motivation at the beginning. At the beginning of the novel, they wanted things to be better, but something, and maybe it's just that power that they want, right? I mean, that thirst for power, we've seen that over and over and over again in a number of different works in literature and that sort of thing. But maybe it's that thirst for power that's creating this very destructive and very oppressive force. And so it's kind of scary what's going on, right? It's a little scary to see these pigs go from this very genuine, like, hurrah, we're going to get together and everything will be great, to we now need to kill humans and we are more important, right? Do you see that level of importance that the pigs feel that they have? They are more important than all the other animals, right? We need more food. We need these things because we're the smart ones. And so then it ends where they all do kind of come back together, right? They come back together and they end up having the October, the 12th is the anniversary of the Battle of the Cow's Head, and once Midsummer Day, the anniversary of the rebellion, right? The anniversary of the Battle of the Cows, or Cowshed, sorry, not Cow's Head, Cowshed, which is an interesting name. So again, kind of to recap, the complex character is one who has very intricate motivations, very, very specific motivations. What I want you to do right now is, knowing a little bit more about the complex character and also how the complex character factors into Napoleon, I want you to get out your journal and write about the complex character as it applies to Animal Farm, and specifically how it applies to Napoleon. How is Napoleon our complex character? Kind of recapping what we just talked about. And what does that mean for the future of the novel, for the future of Animal Farm, for the future of the animals? Where is this all going to take them? Are we going to see a very happy regime still? Are things going to get negative? I mean, what's going to happen? Okay, and how is this complex character, Napoleon, going to change things? A huge thing about the complex character, guys, is without that complex character, we really wouldn't have a story, right? Imagine not having Napoleon in here. If we didn't have Napoleon, there's a very good chance that the animals might live more peacefully, that maybe Jones would have taken over and the story would have ended right there. I mean, it is important to note that with that leadership, they were able to hold the farm, right? Which is good to some extent. But that complex character, without the complex character, um, they uh, they drive so much of the plot, so much of the story, right? And it is interesting to note who our protagonist might be, right? It's a little unclear at this point who our main protagonist is, and until we figure that out, who's our antagonist, right? So these are questions that hopefully will be answered. But again, what I want you to do, get out your journal and write about Napoleon as a complex character. What will it mean for the future of the novel? What will it mean for the future of the animals, right? And that is class. Okay, so if you have any questions, let me know. I'll be back on Monday. I will probably be out of email service, out of the internet service. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, pretty much all 3 of those days. But I will be back Monday, and I believe you need to read the next chapter. I think you need to read chapter 5 for Monday. And we will reconvene then. So have a fantastically safe break, and I will see all of you then. All right, bye.